Welcome, everybody, to The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. I'm Santiago Kneeland, your host, and today we're going to talk about Luke Skywalker. I believe that Luke Skywalker is the main character, the main story. I mean, he's the one that really drives Star Wars. The story of his family, his personal story, and everything really works around the hero's journey of his life. So I'm really happy. I'm really honored to have a very distinguished panel with me today. They are friends of mine, and Margie, who was part of the initial Star Wars craze. So there's a lot of stories that we're going to be unpacking. So first of all, let me introduce, ladies first, Margie Ray. Margie is 35 years as a research scientist. She has different areas of interest, but her main areas are biochemistry and lipid protein integrations, protein structure, and protein crystal growth in Earth normal and microgravity. Basically, she is all of the biology and sciences. Thanks for being with us, Margie.
I'm glad to be here. We're talking about one of my favorite subjects, and I'm all about that. So this is going to be fun. This will be a lot of fun.
Thanks for being here, Margie. Then we have Ian. Ian is a mechanical engineer, and he has a very scientific mind. He likes to take complicated things and simplify them. So I like his approach to things. He likes to take complicated stuff, break them down, and that gives us a real insights into how things work. And one of the interesting things is that Ian is an aerospace instrumentation engineer. So he works with instruments. That's something that's really crucial in Star Wars, all the technology that we see here. And then we have Alfonso Villa, and I'm really happy to have Alfonso. Alfonso is a dear friend of mine from Mexico. We've known each other, I think, all of our lives. Alfonso is a Star Wars fan and collector since 1981. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical and electrical engineering and 27 years of experience in automotive industry in both the commercial and operational and executive roles. So he knows all about cars. And he is interested in science, the spirit, and many paths to transcendence. And one of the things that I like about Poncho is that I've been having, discussions with him about Star Wars. I think the deepest discussions I've had of the wisdom in Star Wars are with him. So I'm really happy to have him here because he's fundamental for this part of the podcast. So thank you, Poncho. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invitation, Santiago. Nice to share the stage here with Margie and Ian, and looking forward to the discussion. You know, I love Star Wars and the myth and the Force and the spiritual part behind it. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, we're really excited to have you guys here. So let's get to it. The topic for today is Luke Skywalker, and I want to analyze him in the different facets of his life. I mean, there's the part when he's the hero, then he is also a part when he's a master. Maybe we don't have a lot of information from that story, but he was also a master. And then we also see Luke. And there's a certain thing that he has with the dark side. I mean, he always wears dark, black clothes, and he has a capacity. We see him in The Mandalorian, in that scene when he rescues Baby Yoda, that he has the similar scene, the hallway scene as Darth Vader. And we kind of see those parallelisms. So there's something that in there with Luke Skywalker and the dark side that I want us to talk about. And I also want to discuss the death of Luke Skywalker, which is something I think very symbolic to all the people that were fans of him. You want to see his trajectory and see him die. And also the destruction of the Jedi, the Jedi tree. And it's very interesting because the two people that seal the coffin in the Jedi are really Luke Skywalker and Yoda. I mean, the two grandest teachers of the Jedi are the ones that put the nails in the coffin. And I want to see why. So first of all, Luke the hero. Luke the hero, just to start this off, is a very interesting story. We've seen the buildup of the rebellion against the Empire. We see all this buildup of how they're doing, they're conspiring, and they're, the senators inside, and they're doing all this, and they're really constructing the alliance, the Rebel Alliance, and they have all this organization and they have all constructed everything. But suddenly, out of the blue, comes Luke Skywalker, and he's the one that gets on the on the X-wing, and he destroys the Death Star, and he's the hero. But where does he come from? There's a story about Anakin, and he was supposed to be, kind of his destiny was supposed to be this hero. So how do we unpack this? How do we understand Luke Skywalker as a hero?
Luke is on a journey, right? He is a farm boy living in a godforsaken planet out on the outer rim of the galaxy, and then suddenly the rebellion comes to him. Basically, these droids happen to land on his planet and are looking for somebody that he knows, somebody from the past who later on we find out that is living there because he's watching over Luke, right? He is preventing his father from finding him and probably destroying him. And the interesting thing for me, I think, is how Luke goes from being a farm boy in Tatooine to being a key person, having a key role in the Rebel Alliance, and of course destroying later on the Death Star, as Santiago mentioned. And this is a journey, a journey of recognition of where he stands, who he is, and what he wants to do. And something within himself is telling him he has to go. He at some point Yoda is saying, never. I've been watching him for a long time. Never his mind on where he was. He always had his mind somewhere else. I think because the planet was maybe too small for him. He had his eyes set on the galaxy and had grandiose ideas probably. But it's really the opportunity that comes to him and it's placed in front of him, and he rejects it. He says, no, I cannot go. I have many things to do here. My uncle told me I can do it after the next season. Then I can go and do whatever I want. And life at some point forces him to take the step because he first has the opportunity to decide. But then it's like a no-brainer because when he goes back to see his family, his aunt and uncle, they are dead. So he doesn't have anything to do there. And Obi-Wan needs him, and he was curious about it, and then he takes the decision consciously and goes forward into becoming the hero that we know. And so that's really the first step into the big world that is in front of him.
No, thank you. I think that's very important, point to what you're saying. There's called the call to adventure that was placed on Luke, and that first he rejects it. There's something that you say he doesn't. I can't take it. But like you said, suddenly his uncle and aunt are dead, and now there's nothing for him but to embrace this. So yes, in a way, destiny was knocking on his door. So he was that. But I think it's very important, and what you're saying, that he had to take that opportunity. If he didn't want to take it, I mean, the story would have ended there, and nothing would have happened.
There would be no Star Wars.
Exactly. Thank you for that contribution, Poncho. Margie, you want to share something?
Yeah, I really appreciate that synopsis, particularly about how to view him. I saw Star Wars on his opening.
Well, tell us, give us that story and tell us your points.
Well, I had just started graduate school, and I was just getting to know my graduate student friends, and everybody thinks people in science are just totally geeks. And everybody I know in science has read a lot of science fiction. They go to every science fiction movie there ever was. I mean, we just like that stuff. Okay. So, the movie was coming out, and I had just barely met a lot of these people, and they all said, we're going to go see Star Wars. I said, oh boy, I'm in, and so we had to stand in line like 2 hours. And we didn't get in the very first showing, which was like, we couldn't get out of the lab in time. We had to go, but we still had to stand in line 2 hours to get into the second one. And we were all talking about it, that we had heard, all this stuff. And so we go into the movie, and we're all sitting there, and there was like we were sitting on 2 rows right behind each other, and it when it started rolling, you could just hear this like collective gasp. I mean, nobody had ever seen the start of a movie like that ever. Okay. And And then, then when the cruiser comes overhead, you know, there were a lot of expletives around me, that were going on that I won't share on this recording. But anyway, we just couldn't, it was just, you felt like that thing was right over your head. It was like the whole place was vibrating, and you could just feel the energy of the people. We were just all so amazed at how it started. We just couldn't, just couldn't fathom what was going to happen. And so, of course, then the movie starts. But for weeks afterwards, when we would like meet up after, everybody go to the Rat to have a beer or whatever, that was a topic of conversation. I mean, it went on for months. People would talk about, did you notice this? And some people had already gone back to see it like 3 and 4 times. By this time, people were going back to see it. I actually saw it again there. And then when I went home for Thanksgiving, I took a bunch of friends to see it. So I saw it like 3 times in the first year, because there was so many little things that you wanted to know and to, understand. And we all knew that it had to turn into something, more. There had to be more. They couldn't stop there. I mean, they just couldn't. It would kill us all. And so that was the way we looked at it. So it was a wonderful experience to have, actually been there at the birth of something that was just so huge, and but to get back to Luke, had been reading a lot of Joseph Campbell, and the hero's journey, and to understand, to really understand that. And then, you go back and you look at like Maslow, when you're looking at archetypes, and Campbell, talks about archetypes, but he also talks about why we need myth. And this is what Star Wars was going to turn into, and did turn into, is the myth for our generation, for baby boomers on. It's the myth that, I mean, Greeks had theirs, and we've carried some of them forward, when we look at Ulysses and all these other things. But this is our myth. Okay, this is the one that we relate to, even though it's set in a time far away, and in our case, it would be far into the future. But he still is. Lucas is still using the archetype. When the potential. Remember, he is a potential hero until he makes a choice, and until then, it's all potential, and there's no actuals yet. But from that choice that was in some cases somewhat forced on him because of the death of his aunt and uncle, he still made it. He could have gone and crawled into a hole, and said, I don't want any part of this.
Mm.
But he didn't. He did what in the hero's journey actually happens. He made a choice. Well, there are young people, and in my generation too. We were making choices every day. I mean, they weren't necessarily going to save a whole cosmos or whatever, but you're making choices that do have, significant consequences. And this is what myth sort of teaches us, is that you may not be the bravest guy around, you may not be the smartest guy around, you may not be, whatever. But there are times that you may have choices that are going to make, real differences in your life, and maybe the people around you. And this is what's so neat. And I'll tell you one really interesting thing. My godson later, who at that time, of course, had not even been born, my godson later became as a little kid. Don't ask me why. He loved Boba Fett. He does. I don't know why, but he did. And but he was avid about I don't know how many times he saw Star Wars. But even as like a 5-year-old, he could quote lines out of, and when we got to where we would say Bear's having a Luke moment, his nickname was Bear. We say he's having a Luke moment, because he's making a decision, a choice. And, it's sort of like has gotten into our whole culture. And, this is the part at the beginning when Luke makes a choice. you know, we can all look back at points in our lives where we made choices that were very significant. Okay. This is just beginning to give you an outline of just how significant our choices can be if you can relate yourself to the myth
Yeah. No.
and give your and take the, you know, you have to realize that, you know, you're not necessarily a really courageous person at that time, but you are making, you know, making a choice.
That's really good, Margie. I think that ties into we can all be heroes, you know. I mean, it's that sometimes we don't realize it and we don't expect it. And some of the things that we've been unpacking on in these podcasts is that we sometimes don't feel we have the dignity. We're not worthy, maybe, but we are, and that's very important, you know. I mean, there's we all have a piece in this puzzle, in this universe. And one of the things, not only of Luke Skywalker, but that I like about Star Wars is that even the most insignificant character, you know, does something that is transcendental, that, you know, saves the galaxy. So even if you don't consider yourself, you know, important enough, there's maybe, you know, that small thing that you're doing that is going to change the world. So never doubt. And there's a phrase they use that about the droids, you know, that never doubt the capacity of a droid or something to change the world or something like that. Because, you know, it's interesting. And Poncho and I have a theory about the droids and who, as the narrators of the story. But if it wasn't for these two droids, you know, R2 and C3PO, how many times would we have our heroes killed, you know, just right off the bat in the garbage container? You know, they would have been crushed if it wasn't for them. So everybody has a role to play.
He was getting bored as a farm boy. He knew he had a calling, but he was duty bound to help his aunt and uncle, and he wasn't going to let them down. He was going to fulfill that. But when that was removed, then he followed his destiny. And he, you know, I kind of identify with that a little bit. I used to be a mechanic. I was a mechanic for 8 years. I went to vocational school to auto tech to be a mechanic, and I thought it was amazing opportunity to do, and I really looked forward to doing it. And I enjoyed it for a while, and then I realized this isn't what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And my big step was going back to college after 8 years of being out of school, and that was terrifying. The idea, I didn't know if I could do it, but I did. So the big step, was taking the first step. That was stepping out and taking the first step was the hardest part, but it's the best thing I ever did. So I understand the reluctance and the fear of making that step, but it was what I was supposed to do.
You know?
The 8 years wasn't wasted because that was an excellent building foundation for mechanical engineering, learning all of the things about vehicles and the engineering behind it. And I had just a fascination with machines. So it was time well spent, but I recognized it was time to move on.
Yeah, that's interesting point of view. But yeah, I mean I mean, there's sometimes the calling, and you have a duty, like you're saying, you know, and sometimes that duty, sometimes you have to take it, even if there's a duty there, or, you know, you have to take the big leap.